Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch, and in this video, I'd like to take you through the process of creating a custom help system that you can incorporate into any of your projects. It's a fairly long video, but in the process, I'm going to introduce you to some concepts that you may not have considered, and in the end, you should have a system that you'll be able to use immediately in your own projects. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and leave me a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and ring that bell to get notifications whenever I release a new video. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. A link is in the description. There is a starter project for this video, and you can download it from the link in the description. There are 3 different branches in the repository, and the one that you want is the starter project branch. That contains a full application that I'll describe shortly. There is a part 1 completed branch that will contain the completed source code for this video, and a part 2 branch that will contain the source code for the second video in this 2-part series. So make sure you download the zip file from the starter branch so that you can work along with me. The application really has nothing to do with the tutorial, so I'm not going to go through the code. I'll just leave that up to you to explore. It's an application that will run on iPhone and iPad. And I created this app because I want to make sure that the way I present a help screen must work with the tab view, navigation stacks, or split navigation views, and modal sheets. And this app has all of these. As you can see here on the iPhone version, there is a list of people in a navigation stack on the first view, and each person has an age. This is all mock data, and updating and creating new users doesn't persist. The second tab shows the distribution of that list of people by age. Back on the first screen, I can tap on a person to push an edit view onto the navigation stack, and here I can update the name and age and save those updates. I can also tap on the plus button, and a modal sheet pops up, or we can create a new person. Back on the list view, there's also a swipe to delete. And there's one more button, a settings button on the navigation bar, where you can tap on another modal sheet, and it appears where there might be something here for some configuration options. So let me switch over to the iPad now. And here we see the new tab view introduced in iPad OS 18. And I'm using a navigation split view to show the sidebar, which is a list of people. If I tap on a person, the detail view on the right will display the tapped person. And here you can edit and update that person. The Add User presents a modal sheet for the iPad to add a user. And the Settings view is also presented as an iPad modal sheet. The Distribution tab shows that age distribution. What I want to do in this first video then is to create a floating help button that we can add to any one of the views that we want to display help for. And that help can contain text, an image, and that image might be optional. And I want that implementation of this floating button to take only 2 lines of code. There will be an optional help screen enum that will actually conform to the view protocol, and that can be used to trigger a modal sheet using the item content initializer. The second will be a view modifier that will pass in the optional enum as a binding, along with a special case of this binding that represents the current screen and its content for presentation. So the first thing that we need to do is decide what we want to have on our help screen. So let's create a folder called help. And then let's create a new file called HelpPage. Inside there, create a struct called HelpPage. Now we may or may not have an image in our help view, but if we do, we'll have to import SwiftUI so we can create an optional image property. So first we'll import SwiftUI, and then create the property called image that is an optional image. We'll have a title, and that will be a string, and another property called text. And I possibly want to use Markdown for this. So we'll need to specify that the type is not string, but rather localized string key. So right now, if we try to create an instance of this struct and we do not want to have an image, we would have to specify nil as a value. I don't like that, but that's what the struct's member-wise initializer will give us. What we can do is create a second initializer, and we can let Xcode generate that for us. But as the parameter for the initializer, we're going to specify that image is nil right there. And now when we try to generate an instance of this struct, we'll see that we have two initializers that we can choose from. Next, we're going to create another file, and we're going to call it HelpType. I'm going to change the import to SwiftUI, and I'm going to create an enum called HelpType. And we're going to want a case for each of the different views that we want to provide help for. So in our case, there'll be a case for the people list, for person edit, for person add, for distribution, and for settings. Well, next I want to conform the enum to the identifiable protocol. And to conform to the identifiable protocol, we'll need an ID. So we can use the ID where the type is the same type, so we can use the capital S self, and then simply return the case, which will be lowercase self. And then next, I'd like the enum to also conform to the view protocol. And this is going to force us to add a body variable that must return some kind of a view. So right now, I'm just going to supply a text view with the string HelpView. So this means that we can simply provide HelpType case anywhere in our code, and that case will actually be the view that we specify in the body. So each one of our views is going to have one or more pages of content that we can swipe through. And each one of those pages will be a help page. And the navigation title of the help page will stay the same throughout. So let's create another computed property called title, which will switch on self. And then for each of the cases, I'll simply return some string that will represent the title of that content that we want to have help for. So we've got the title, but we'll still need the content. And that content is going to be an array of pages. And those pages are help pages. So in order to make this easy for us to keep our content separate from our actual struct, I'm going to create an extension on HelpType. And this could actually be in a separate file, but I'm just going to keep it here for now. And I'm going to call that property in the extension pages that will be an array of help page. And then I can switch on self and let Xcode generate the different cases. And for now, let me just return an empty array for each case. So what we're going to need to return in our body eventually is going to be a help view. So we're going to have to create a help view, and we're going to have to pass in two properties. So let's create a new file, and we're going to call that HelpView, and it's a SwiftUI file. And the two properties that we'll pass in them will be the title as a string and pages as an array of help page. And then to fix the preview, we can provide one of our cases so that when we design this view, we'll be able to see it take shape. So let's choose the people list case. So the title will be the title property, and pages will be the pages property. What you display as a help page is totally up to you. So as long as you can provide an optional image, a title, and some text. So let's return to the help type here and start to add some content to our pages as an array of these help page objects. So for the people list screen, I like to display 3 pages so that I can show you some of what you can do. Now, if you're working along with me, I'll provide a link in just a minute that will give you all of this text. so don't copy me, just watch. And I'll speed up the recording. In the first item of the array, I'm going to create a help page with an image, and I'm going to use a system image. And I'll give it a title. For the text, I just want to use a multi-line string. So I'm going to use 3 quotes like this so that I can enter my text in between and have some returns. Now, because it's a localized string key, I can use Markdown here, like this when I bold swipe. And I can even use links like this. That's the power of Markdown in SwiftUI. For the second page for this screen, I'll not include an image, but rather just title and text. And then for the third, I want to include an image of what I want to show, which is how to delete a person. So I'm just going to go to the Start tab here on the preview and then partially swipe to the right until I can see that red trash can. And then I'm going to, on my keyboard, hold down the Control, Command, and Shift-4 to bring up the Mac screen's capture crosshairs. And I'm just going to select the top portion of that view. And this will capture the image to the clipboard. So now I can go to the Asset folder and paste it in. And then I can rename it to Swipe Delete. So now I have an image asset. So back in the HelpType extension, I can create a new help type for the array. For the image, I can use this image. And now we can use a .swipe delete to get our image asset. And the rest is just either text or Markdown text. So it'd be a waste of time if you had to type along with me and watch me enter code here. So I'd like to provide you with a link to a GitHub gist that I have. And you can copy and paste what I have prepared for you. So go to the link that's provided in the description. And then go to the raw text and simply just copy the whole extension and not the import. If you want to download the entire file, you can download that file and that would replace your extension. But with that copied, I can return to the HelpType file and then copy that extension and replace it with what I have on my clipboard. This keeps what I already had and added some help pages in the arrays for my other type cases. And what you'll see in each case is that I've only added 1 page for each array. We've got the multi-pages on the people list, but only 1 for all other of our screens. So now all we have to do is go back to the body, which is the view that is presented when I create an instance of this type. And then instead of presenting just that simple text view, I'm going to present the help view, and I'll pass in the title, which is the title, and the pages, which is the array of pages content for that particular case. So let's design our help view then. And since we're using our people list for the preview, we should be able to see it take shape as we design it. Now I want to have it displayed within a navigation bar and a dismiss button. So the first thing that I'm going to need is an environment variable for the dismiss key path. Next, I'm going to replace the body content with a navigation stack. Inside there, I'll create a VStack. And then to the VStack, I'm going to attach a navigation title using the title property that comes from our enum case. And then I'm going to set the navigation bar title display mode to inline. And then I'm going to add a toolbar. And in the toolbar, I'm going to have a single button where the action is that dismiss. And for the label, I'm going to create an image with the system name xmark.circle.fill. Now what I could do is use a paging tab view to swipe through the different pages, but that doesn't give me the control that I want. Instead, I'm going to create a scroll view that is going to be in the horizontal direction, but I'm not going to show the indicators. And then inside the scroll view, I can create an H stack with a spacing of 0. And then I can use a for each loop from 0 up to the number of pages .count with an ID set to self. And that's going to give us an index as an iterator. So to make this content constrained to the width of the screen for each case, I'm going to first create a state property to track the scroll ID, which is an optional int. And then I'm going to use the scroll position modifier on the scroll view to bind the ID to that scroll ID. So this is going to give me the index that I'll be able to use for my indicators. And then to have it scroll as a tab view paging, I can set the scroll target behavior to paging. And then within the scroll view container, I can apply the scroll target layout modifier to the H stack. Now, if all of this confuses you, I suggest that you watch my video on that topic to get it all sorted out. I'll leave a link in the description. So now within the for each loop, we can make it easier for ourselves if we create a property called page. That is the page at the index of the pages. Next, we can create a VStack, and I'll add some padding to the VStack. And then to constrain the content of each of the items in the for each loop to a single screen, we can use a container relative frame of horizontal. Well, as the first item in the VStack, we can use an if-let to unwrap the page image property if there is one. And then we can display that image. We can make it resizable, scale to fit, and clipped if necessary, and add some padding. Below the image, we can create a text view displaying that page.title property, and I'll set the font to a title size. And then in the case that we've set a large string for that title, we'll set the multi-line text alignment to center. Then below this, I'll follow that with a scroll view. And it's in here that we'll be presenting our page.text in a text view. And then we'll set the content margins to 15 for the scroll content. And finally add a spacer. Now you can see that you can swipe between screens, but there's no indicator to show how many pages there are nor which page of the set you are on. It's not obvious. So we're going to create our own paging indicators. Well, now we can create that help indicator view. So again, within the help folder, let's create another SwiftUI file and give it that name, help indicator. And we'll pass in the page count to this view as an int. We'll also pass in the current scroll ID as a binding, and it will be an optional int. And then for design purposes, we can fix the preview by setting the page count to 3 and the scroll ID to a constant of 2 because it's a binding. So in the body, we'll first check to see if the page count is greater than 1. So we don't need these indicators if there's only one page. If it is, then we can create an H stack. And then within the H stack, a for each loop that will loop from 0 up to the page count, where the ID is self. And that's going to give us the index. Next, we can let the current page be the scroll ID or 0 since it's optional. Then we can create a button where the action is to set the scroll ID to the index. For the label, we can create an image using the system name circle.fill. We'll apply a font of system size, and that's going to change depending on whether or not the index is equal to current. If it is, then we'll set it to be larger at 12, else 8. Similarly, for the foreground style, if the index is equal to the current, then we'll use a UI color of light gray for the color. Otherwise, we'll display white. And then we can apply a nice ease in out animation over the value, which is the scroll ID. And then I'm going to add padding of 7 all around. And then we can set a background color to another UI color of light gray, but with an opacity of 0.2, but have it within a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 10. Returning now then to the Help view, well, we can present the Help Indicators view after we set the scroll target behavior. So we'll create the Help Indicators view, where the page count is the pages.count, and the scroll ID is the scroll ID. We can see now as we scroll that the page indicator view will show us clearly which page we're on. Let's just add a little padding to the bottom of this view as well. So now the question is, how do we present a button that will display this view, and how do we trigger it? Now, since I want to apply this to any view that I specify, I'm going to create a view modifier for the view. So I'm going to create another new file, and I'm going to call it HelpButton ViewModifier. And it's just a regular Swift file, but I'll need to change the import to SwiftUI. And then I can create a struct that I'll call HelpButton Modifier, and I'll have it conform to the view modifier protocol. And this conformance will require a function called body that's going to receive the content that you pass in and then return some view. So this content will be the view that we pass in so that we can then apply more modifiers to that. And I'm going to need to know the current help that we want to present. So let's create a current help property that is of type HelpType. And since the content is a view, we can add a button to the safe area inset. And we'll need to specify that the edge is the bottom. So on our content, safe area inset at the bottom is within here. We're going to create the button to trigger that presentation. So that button should display a modal sheet. And one of the ways that we can present a modal sheet is if we have an instance of an optional state property that's identifiable. Well, we have that in our help type. So let's create a binding here called help that will be that optional help type. So we'll pass that in from our view when we present this modifier. So now then we can attach to that safe area inset a sheet where the item is bound to that help. And that's going to create a help instance, which is you see as a help type. And that help type conforms to view, so that instance itself is a view. So what we're going to be presenting in the sheet, the view, will be the help itself. So how do we set the value? Well, let's create a button. and I'm going to leave the action for now. For the label, we'll create an image using the system name ? I'm going to set the font design to rounded and a foreground style of white. And I'll make it bold. And I'm going to add some padding to it and set the background color to green, but be within a circle. And then I'll add some shadow with a color of black and an opacity of 0.3 and a radius of 10 with an offset of 0 in the X direction, but 5 in the Y direction. Now the action is simply to assign the current help to the binding. Now I'll also want this button to be on the bottom right of the safe area inset. So I'm going to apply a frame with a max width of infinity and an alignment of trailing. And I'll add some padding all around. And then I'm going to add a little bit more padding to the trailing edge. Now, one last thing I'd like to make our experience more Swifty is to create an extension of the view and create a function called HelpButton that has two parameters: current help that is a help type, and help that is a binding to an optional help type. Both of these are the same properties that our modifier has, and it's going to return some view. Then we can simply, on the view, call the modifier function, passing in the HelpButton modifier with our two parameters as arguments. We have everything we need now to use this in our solution. So let's first go to the people list view. So for every view that we want to present a help, all we have to do is two things. We're going to create a state property for the help, which is an optional help type. And this is what's going to be used to trigger that sheet presentation in our view modifier. So then, to the entire view, we can apply our new HelpButton modifier, where we'll pass in what we want to present as the current help, which is the people list case. And then, as the binding to help, will be our help state variable. So we see that button now, and when we tap on it, it displays our help view with the scrolling content. And we can see our indicators change as we swipe. Perfect. So let's see how this works on a modal sheet that's presented. And our settings view is triggered by that modal action. So remember, all we need to do is to add 2 lines of code. We'll always need a state property for the help type as an optional. And then we'll attach the HelpButton modifier to the view. And for the current help, we'll specify the case that we want, which in this case is settings, and then bind it to that state property help for the help property. Tapping on this button presents the help for the settings. And when we display this on top of another modal sheet, as you see shortly, we get a modal on top of a modal. Let's move on to the distribution tab and do the same thing. Great, that looks good. The person detail view is really just a group that, if no person is selected, will present a content unavailable view. Otherwise, it's going to present the form for the edit. And so this is the result of the enum case, which is the person form type. And I use that same technique here to display a different view based on an enum case, which in this case is update, and it passes in the selected person. Now, the other case for this enum would be the edit case, and it presents the person form view. So let's just take a look at that view. Both of those two cases will present the same view. So person form view is a dual purpose view, and it's used for updating and editing. So we can use a conditional for our current help. And this uses a view model, and that view model has a case that is called updating. That's a Boolean that will let us know whether or not we're either editing or updating. So first then, we'll need to create that state property for the help type, the optional help type. And then for the help button, we can check if the model is updating property is true. And if it's the case, we'll present the person edit case. Otherwise, we'll present the person add case. So let's go to the Start tab once more and test them all from there. So first, the People tab. Looks good. Next, the Settings. Good here. How about Add? Yep, we're getting the help for adding a new person. Now, if I navigate to that particular person, we'll get the Edit view, and the help is correct. And finally, the Distribution view. It works too. Now, as a final test, let's switch to an iPad device and let's go into landscape mode so that we can see it better. As you can see, as I tap each of the help buttons, the correct help screen appears. The iPad modal sheets are different, but I think it works for this help system too. There's one thing that I noticed that's wrong, and you might be wondering why I use a button in the indicator view instead of just an H stack of images. Well, what I was expecting was that if I tapped on one of the circles, it would jump to that view. But now, as you see, nothing happens. So I've made a couple of mistakes. Back in the Help Indicator view, I shouldn't be assigning to current the scroll ID. It should be the specific index. And this is going to force a switch to that view. And because I want the transition to be smooth, I can enclose this in an animation block. One final test then. Now I can tap on any one of those indicators and the help screen will scroll smoothly to that view. Fantastic. Well, that completes this video. And as you can see, we have a pretty effective help system right now that you can start to incorporate into your own projects if you like. You can choose to design the help view any way you like and perhaps add more properties to the help page struct. In fact, as a follow-up to this video, I'm going to do just that. In the next video, I'll be adding in some more customization, but the challenge is going to be to make sure that I don't break any code that already exists. So make sure you join me in the next video, and I'll be releasing that 1 week from following this one, so you may have already seen the link in the description if you're watching this video a week after release. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. You can subscribe to my channel to get notifications of new videos, and remember that you can also download my YouTube channel listing app for free and quick access to all of my 350 plus YouTube videos. A link's in the description. And also remember I have a full SwiftUI course available on my Teachable site where you learn how to build a fun, multi-targeted app.